Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Branley.
And I'm Alicia Coakley. Every member of the church has a story to share, one that can instill faith, invite growth, and inspire others.
On today's episode, we're going to learn how one woman's journey through motherhood led to some unexpected surprises from above. Welcome to Latter-day Lights. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Latter-day Lights. We're so glad you're here with us today, and we're really excited to introduce to you our guest, Goldie Wells. Goldie, how are you doing today?
Good, thanks. Excited to talk about our story.
So, Goldie, I have to ask, because you reached out to us. So how did you come across our podcast? How did you find us?
Well, I think it was made for people like me. I love to tell stories and hear stories and perspectives, and any opportunity to feel the spirit and feel uplifted and motivated. So I've just been really enjoying hearing the stories, and I like how we have a different path that we walk, but we can still walk it with our Savior. We can still walk it with God's help and with His comfort, and the differences between us make things a lot more interesting. So I love hearing the differences and how we can, So yeah.
Awesome.
Inspired by your
podcast. Did you just stumble across it somewhere? Or did you have a friend that told you about it, or?
Yep. Nope. I just was guided there, I guess. Yeah. I was really inspired by a guest that you had that spoke about writing. And so I started writing down the story of our son's adoption, and I just commented that, and you said, "Hey, you should reach out." So, yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
That was it.
Well, great.
Cool. Well, Goldie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am from Idaho. Grew up out west and have lived a few different places. I speak Spanish. I served my mission in Spain, and my husband served at the same time. We were in the MTC together. We did not know each other at all, although he likes to tell people that's where we met because he likes the shock factor of it. But no,
Right.
I would have stayed far away from him. He was 22 and handsome and really tall, and so I would have stayed very far away from him in the MTC. But we didn't meet until after, but he loves to tell people that. It's pretty funny. But so we've been married 17 years now, so I was telling Scott, that's the part of life where it just starts speeding up really, really quickly. So now that we have lots of kids, our life just goes by very fast. Every week goes faster and faster.
Right.
So we have 5 boys. So we are the loud, busy family, and
that'll keep you on your toes.
It's also an automatic pass to heaven. So if you're a mother of all boys,
I'm
especially more than just 2, you just St. Peter's going to be like, here, the VIP section's over here for you.
Yeah, it's my mom's favorite story about the chaos in our house is one time we were on the phone and I yelled across the house, "Jonas, get your brother a weapon." She just thought that was so funny because she would have expected someone to say to maybe stop chasing your brother with a weapon, but instead I told him to make things to even the odds a little bit and give him a fighting chance.
That's awesome.
That is us.
Very cool.
So
awesome.
Parenting, the actual having kids has been it's been wonderful. It's been a big focus of what I've been doing the last 15 years, I guess, 16 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So our oldest is 16, and we've had kids every couple of years since then. So
nice.
It's an adventure.
For sure.
Definitely.
Well, we definitely want to hear about that adventure. I know you're going to share a little bit of part of your motherhood adventure with us today, right? So we'll go ahead and just give you the floor. Take it away.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we have 5. Like I said, we have 5 boys. So I guess first off, we hadn't been married too long. I had graduated from college. My husband was finishing up some schooling, but I just felt this call to motherhood pretty quickly. after we got married. So our oldest is 16 now. I think that call that I got to motherhood, it was pretty similar to when I felt like Heavenly Father was calling me on a mission. I definitely felt like I was called, similar to any other young man. I felt like he was telling me that that was what I need to do.
Right.
They always
Okay.
talk about with women that it's something that a choice, but for me, it was definitely a call. So it was pretty similar to that. It's kind of like having people, we call our home an MTC, because it really, those are your investigators. Those are your friends that you're have a stewardship over and that you need to be there for. And then with our second son, I felt that it was time for brothers, which is kind of a fun one. They were pretty surprised when I got that ultrasound that I knew I was having a boy. I didn't know that that wasn't a normal thing, that people didn't know the gender of their baby before. But they were like, what? He's a boy? So yeah. So by the time we had, so that's Ammon. He's 13, Ammon. And Sam is 10. So he was our third son. And I just felt like it was time to add to our family again. It was time to grow our family. And he is a lot of fun. So he was a blessing for a lot of people in our extended family at that time in our life. But I thought I was done. I had a really hard time. I had been having contractions pretty much since 16 weeks. And it was just really, really sick and really, really miserable. So I was just happy to have 3 kids and be at that point. And then we were in the temple, and I had a really powerful experience. I grew up really close to my grandparents, and we were in the temple, and my grandma that had passed away, I felt her presence, and I felt the presence of a little girl, somebody in my family tree, someone that has not been born yet. So it was interesting that I had like this grandmother and this little girl presence that I felt with me. And what they told me is that, and it was all just at once. I actually kind of like went down to my knee, and the temple worker, I kind of grabbed my arm and steadied me. And what I felt is that, what I felt is if I was willing to endure, because it really was like an endure to the end type moment. If you were willing to do it, that there was another child. Wow. So I couldn't say no to that. But it was tough. I was really, really sick, hospitalized many times, and lots of medications and shots. And I had to carry around a pump of a medication that was attached to my stomach.
Wow.
And then I was hospitalized. Jeez. Yeah. I spent 5 weeks in the hospital, just really, really sick, bleeding, and my water broke and then resealed, which doesn't happen really. So it was a powerful experience. And the reason I think this part of the story is so important is because when we were having our kids, I'd received the promptings before my husband. It's because I needed that strength. I think it's because I needed that to rely on to actually survive the difficult experiences. And so then our 5th child, who couldn't have been a biological child, that could not have happened. That could not have worked with my broken body, could not have carried another child. He was already a miracle. He was born at 35 weeks, 7 pounds. And I told the doctor he was going to be 7 pounds, and the doctor rolled his eyes because it didn't look like that a baby could grow with what he'd seen. It really just didn't look like. He thought we were life flighting, and didn't think he was going to be so strong and healthy, and he was. But we know why Jonas is here. Not only does he have his own journey, but he is here to walk through this life with Elijah. They have known each other since before they came here. And So I know Elijah had to come here and be here. Sorry, Jonas had to come here. I mix up their names, of course, because they're brothers. Jonas had to be here. He had to be here for Elijah. So when Jonas was about a year old, we had just moved to Indiana, where we live now. And we had, of course, had to do renovations and get settled in. And some of our older kids have some special needs. We have a lot of ADHD and deal with some obstinate defiant disorder and reading disabilities. And so I had two with serious struggles, and then a toddler and a baby. And then my husband starts talking adoption.
Oh, wow.
And yes. Yeah. So the summer of 2016, he is just bringing it up like crazy. I mean, it escalates to the point where in September, I am up in Heber, Utah, on a girls' trip and a sisters' trip with my family. And Brandon, my husband, is texting me nonstop about adopting. He had taken the kids to see the Storks movie, if you remember that movie.
Yep.
And he was telling me that he was baby hungry. And I was like, you have a baby. Like, I don't know what the problem is. You actually have a baby. And so mom was babysitting the baby while I was out of town for a few days. And I said, get in the car and drive to Chicago. Like, go get your baby. If you cannot go 3 days without a baby, go get your baby. So finally he convinces me to pray about it. So I'm at church alone. I'm at church without kids, which never happens. So during the sacrament, I just bow my head and I'm like, okay, just a simple prayer, just to kind of get him off my back, basically, right? And as soon as I bowed my head, words and an image and just a complete outpouring of love completely filled me. And I just burst into tears. And the concept that our family will be in the hollow of God's hand during the adoption process. And then in my mind, I could see his hand strong and comforting. And I could see that it was cupped and that my little family fit in the hollow of his hand during this process, during the adoption process. And okay, so I guess we're adopting. That was, it was a really special experience because it's important to know that this was the best way our son could be born. That there is nothing wrong with how he came into the earth. This is the best way he could. And so the story is not just my story, it's his story. It's the story. My mom has a story. My cousin, who was his foster mom, has a story. The families that loved him and cared for him have a story. He was born in Mountain Home, Idaho. And during that fall, so right after I got that impression, my mom attended a funeral with my cousin and our son Elijah, who at the time everyone called Baby J. He was Baby J. So she saw Baby J and saw his birth mom. So that was the first kind of sneak peek that anybody had. And then a couple weeks after the funeral, my cousin just couldn't get the baby out of her mind. And so she ended up calling her first cousin. So I am Heather's cousin on our dad's side. And then our adopted son is Heather's cousin on her mom's side.
Okay.
So my first cousin with Elijah's grandmother. So I grew up going to Elijah's, I knew his grandmother, I knew his great grandmother. I grew up going to her house because that was my cousin's grandma. She lived in the same town. So when they would come visit, I would go to her house. So that's a lot of fun. So everyone involved, he stayed in the family. It was really comforting to have him sealed to the family for everybody. Yeah. So that was been a huge blessing. It's been awesome. So she is feeling this prompting to call her cousin, which is Baby Jay's grandma, and just kind of check in and see if they need anything. if they need maybe some supplies or just some support. And by the end of the conversation, she's getting in the car from Idaho Falls, from Ammon, Idaho, near Idaho Falls. And she's driving to Mountain Home, about 4 hours away, to pick up the baby, to take care of the baby.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So about 6 hours later, she has a baby. And she's a full-time college student because her kids are middle school to college age. So she's gone back to school and is in school full-time at BYU, Idaho. Yeah. And she calls my mom in an absolute panic. I have this baby. She's like trying to figure out what to do. He's having a few concerns. So she knows she needs to get him to the pediatrician, and he has to learn to latch because he hasn't learned to latch yet. And just, he's 3 months old, and it's right before Thanksgiving, and she's driving home with this new baby. So she's calling anyone she can think of. A NICU nurse in their ward came and taught him how to latch. Families babysat him. They brought clothes and everything he could need. And they just really took him in as their own. And he did a lot for them. A lot of families in that ward adopted after having some time with him. There was a really sacred experience where he comforted a family that had lost a baby to SIDS. So he went and he was their angel baby. He went and spent hours with them where they could just hold him and, feel that sacred interchange that you have, with a new baby. They could just soak that up.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was definitely where he needed to be. So along with all that help, she was getting lots of offers to adopt him. She'd gotten probably 12 women had just offhand or seriously said, hey, if that baby needs a home, we're available.
Wow.
And
that's incredible.
And she had joked, yeah, it was. She had mentioned to my mom that maybe he was their grandbaby, thinking of one of my siblings that didn't have any children, that was in relationships or married but didn't have children yet. And my mom thought of me, and she thought, this is crazy. I mean, after the trauma I had been through and having a baby, she finally negotiated with heaven. I'm not going to tell her that anything about adoption at all. I'm just going to tell her that he exists, that Heather is fostering a baby. That is all that's happening. But as soon as she told me, I knew that we had to offer to adopt him, that we had to do everything that we could to be available to him.
Wow.
That we needed to love him like parents, even if it was temporary, because every child deserves that, is worthy of that, of being loved that much. So even if it's temporary, even if you have to love a child that much just while they're in your Sunday school class, or even if you have to love him that much, even when he's one of the neighbor kids, and you make sure that he, gets a high five or gets asked about his day. Every kid needs that. So that was a big realization for me, I think. Was to do that.
Wow. So I have a quick question. Your cousin, was she married? Did she have to talk to a husband about, hey, I'm going to go grab a baby? Or was...
She just happens to have the second best husband I've ever met.
Oh.
Yeah, he just said absolutely. He said absolutely. Oh. Yeah, she said, I'm bringing the baby home. He's like, all right. Their youngest was 10 at the time. Yeah, so he was just like more the merrier. Elisha was very, Baby J, he was very popular among all of the high school kids in the whole area. They would all come over at lunch and play with him, and he was everybody's best friend. So
that is so cool.
He had lots of friends leave on missions a couple of years later, which was kind of fun.
Yeah. And can I ask his birth mother, I guess birth parents, what was the reason for the adoption? Were they just kind of falling on hard times, or do we not know? Or
so his birth mom is single. She still is. She was raising him on her own. We have tried to reach out to, we have the name of who we believe his biological father is, and he looks a lot like him. So we have tried to reach out. His birth mom has told us that he's seen pictures and that he's happy to know that he's okay. So he's dealing with his own struggles of incarceration and drug use and things. But we've heard some good, there's at times during Elijah's life that we've heard that he's employed and doing okay. So, we just kind of hope the best for him and hope to have the opportunity to interact with him. Because I think that will be important to Elijah at some point. He's very close with my husband, with his dad, really close with his dad. That's his favorite human, is his dad. So I could see, him having interest in that someday. When we ask him about it, he's 6.5. So he knows that he has a half sister. So he is excited about having contact with her. So we again have reached out to her adoptive parents. So we're hoping that we can get them in contact. So yeah, we've kind of tried. And his birth mom, we have a good relationship with her now. Yeah, this was a really hard time for her. I know now that she was interested in pursuing adoption for Elijah since she was pregnant with him, but she was really struggling with following through with it because it was just emotionally so much to tackle that she just had a hard time facing it. So she had a lot of trusted people that she loved that cared for him. There's a wonderful family in Mountain Home that cared for him initially when he was just tiny. That helped a lot. And then at 3 months old is when he went with our cousin Heather. And then Heather and Jared and their family fostered him until they gave him straight to us. So I had reached out to Heather just like all those other moms, and it went straight to voicemail because she was dealing with a new baby. Even though we're close, I gave her, I was forgiving. But then immediately Brandon called her, which no dad had reached out. So when he called, she answered the phone and she's like, "Yes, like, are you guys okay? Is everything okay?" And he said, "Heather, we've been feeling like we need to adopt." And he sounded kind of timid, which she thought was hilarious because Brandon is 6'6" and just like a mountain of a man, and she is tiny. They look hilarious next to each other. So she just thought it was so funny that he sounded so timid. So she laughed, and then she immediately felt like that he was our baby, is what she said she felt. Wow. So she went to the temple and got the answer that he was our baby, and she needed to follow the law with exactness. So we went over Thanksgiving weekend not knowing anything. We actually adopted 2 small puppies over Thanksgiving. So apparently we really were baby hungry weekend, which is absolutely hilarious. So Monday morning, I am at gymnastics with 3 kids in gymnastics. Yeah, 3 kids in gymnastics and a baby and a baby carrier. And we have 2 new little puppies at home. And Heather calls. So I step in the little gymnastics like prep room, with all the little cubbies of shoes and all those things. And she says, "I'm at the doctor. So I only have a second, but we'll support you guys adopting him. But I have to go. The doctor's walking in." And I'm just like, "What? Are you?" Oh my goodness. Amazing. So from then on, So then we just tried to wait and just kind of see what would happen. They went through the process of getting legal guardianship. So that was finally granted. So they could start pursuing some things once they had a 6-month guardianship. So they had to go through that legal process. So once they had guardianship, and so many miracles happened. I don't know if you remember, or if either of you lived in the Idaho or Utah, but that Christmas there was massive snowstorms, like the freeways were all closed. And a couple of those closures and things led to Elijah being able to stay with Heather and her family in that foster situation a little bit longer, that then facilitated some of the legal process happening. So some of those snowstorms were for our baby, that he would be able to stay there, and that everything would work out. So that was a sacred experience. We didn't get to meet him Even though we went to Idaho for Christmas, we didn't even get to meet him because of the snowstorm, because we could not
Oh,
get to
yeah.
him. Yeah. So the only really reason we ever thought it would work out is that I felt like his name was going to be Elijah. So that gave me just a little tiny bit of hope that it was going to work out. And we just kept waiting and hoping, once it was, waiting on legal documentation. But once the guardianship came in, then we could really talk to his birth mom about adoption. And it was a huge roller coaster for her. She just really had a hard time. It was really hard for her to consider adopting again, to really bite the bullet on it. So she was saying no, that it wouldn't happen, but then she said yes. So I just took a leap of faith and bought a plane ticket, set up a court date, flew out, picked her up. She showed up and came and got in the car, drove her to the courthouse, and we pulled in the parking lot. And I had this impression that she was going to go on a series, like a roller coaster. I saw the roller coaster in my mind, but then I saw it come to a safe ending, a safe landing at the end. And so when we walked in and they said that our court date had been delayed several hours, I was not surprised by anything that ensued over the next couple of hours. My mom and Heather did not have the same experience. They had a horrible experience waiting. There's a whole story about stress skittles, about them trying to survive those like 2 or 3 hours because his birth mom was really struggling. That whole day was really about her, which is interesting because that's actually the day that I met our son. That's the day I met my son, and still the whole day was about her. It was just really about, it was such a big day, such a difficult time. And right before they called us in, she called me out to go to talk to her. So I sat down on the bench by her and she asked me lots of questions. And I felt like everything was going to work out because of the prompting. But she decided right then that she would do it. So she walked in the courthouse and walked up and sat down next to the judge, because they have to sit, in the witness booth, right? So she was sitting up there. Yeah. So she walked in and she was amazing. She was just a complete triumph. She answered every question with confidence. And then I was a wreck during the whole court proceeding. For the first time, I knew what it was like to really go through the turmoil like everyone else had been going through for 3 hours. And she answered yes to every question, that she would terminate her rights, that the purpose was for us to adopt. And they ask again and again. And then they tell you,
really,
it doesn't matter that you've said yes a bunch of times. Now you can decide. And then they'll say a bunch of things. And at the end, they'll be like, are you sure? Because nothing's happened yet. And then she just said yes. It was an absolute miracle. It was amazing. I was so
I had
proud
no
of her.
idea.
She just showed so much love. Yeah, we did not know. We did not know. My mom was gripping my hand and she was like, stop asking. It was so scary. It was, but she was amazing. She just really did it for him. She just really did what was best for him in that moment. She knew it, and it was not an easy time for her. And then we went and I met him for the first time, which was amazing. He was at a family member's house in town. But I didn't really, still wasn't about me. She hadn't seen him in 2 months. So she spent some time with him. And then some family took her out to dinner. And I took the baby to an attorney's office and tried to see if I get to keep him or not, or if I have to leave him in foster care with my cousin. Right. So unfortunately, by the end of that, I found out that we needed to leave him. But it was okay. Heather felt the same thing, that their time with him wasn't over with. So we left him and I went home and started on the paperwork. I'd say probably 600 pages of paperwork, probably. It was a mountain of a stack. Yeah.
Wow.
The notary.
So that prompting
we were
to
with the notary by the end.
Oh wow. So that prompting that you had, if you can endure, you're going to have another kiddo. Like,
Yeah.
that was like, you didn't think it was going to be 600 pages of paperwork, huh?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I prefer that to
Wow.
throwing up 97 times per day.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, it was, and it was a lot shorter. It was a lot shorter.
Wow.
But yeah, it wasn't easy. I mean, you had to, I had to call and, say, you see that paperwork that you did, do things like that, or send a $30 prepaid envelope to somebody's office, just ask them whatever they needed to get things done. Because you have to get documentation from every place you've ever lived and, all sorts of different things. So yeah,
Wow.
we did that. And then it got close enough and we passed our home study, which is scary. It's scary to have to do it, but it actually, it was a good experience doing a home study, writing about your family and your goals, and then bringing someone in and meeting the kids and just talking to them about adoption and why you wanted to do it. I think it's kind of a good, like, mental exercise going through that process. So I was thankful for it, but it was scary because we didn't really know, what if they would say no because of something, if there was a hole in the fence or if there was a, you didn't know what would cause us not to pass the home study. So
I can relate to that.
Was kind of a scary thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We fostered my nephew for about 6 months back when we lived in Florida. And every single time they came over for home studies or the guardian ad litem was going to check in and talk to the kids, it was like there was so much mental stress. Like, I'm like, okay, did I yell at the kids this week? Like, and we weren't, we didn't do like big spankings or anything like that, but like they're boys and sometimes they got a little pop on the butt. And, and I kept worrying about all that. Like, is that going to, and then of course the kids, right? Like they're like, kids have these great big imaginations too. So I never knew like, what were they going to say? And, I don't know. It was so stressful and you constantly critique like everything in your house, everything you've done, everything you've said, everywhere you've been, it's like, am I good enough? Am I good enough? Am I good enough? Like, can I keep them? And then you get scared thinking even like, oh, well, if they see something that they think is wrong, are they going to take my own kids away from me too? Like, am I not only going to lose the one that I've opened my home to, but am I going to lose the ones that are, born under me? It was so stressful. It's crazy.
Yeah. Our experience was like that. It ended up being great. Once we actually met with her, the kids were amazing. Of course, they all told these sweet things about just how they are so excited to meet the baby and all this stuff. Aww. And you stress we have a joke in our family that, what do you mean that worrying never solved anything? Because I have never worried about anything that actually happened. So preventing by worrying, that's a real thing. Not really. It really isn't. It really doesn't help. But yeah.
Too funny.
So all this led up to Elijah's 6-month birthday. So at midnight, the day he turned 6 months old, we met my cousin and her family at my parents' house to take custody, which I never imagined what it would be like. I walked in the door at midnight and I walk up the stairs and she hands me the baby and 2 more ounces of bottle in the bottom and she goes back to bed. She was done.
Oh, really?
Getting up in the middle of the night. Yeah. So I got him at midnight. I'm like, okay, well, hopefully all the questions I've been bothering her with for the last 2 months, that I actually know what he likes. And yeah, we just had a tender night, snuggled all night. And that was our first night together. So it was a lot. That weekend was special because it was a new beginning for us, but it was also a time of mourning for my cousin and her family.
Right.
Because it was a big loss for them.
Yeah.
Because they had loved him. They had taken him into their family and into their home. So it was a time of loss. So it was a kind of a balancing act. It was a whole range of emotions that weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after another hectic week of running all over Boise, finishing paperwork and doing things, I finally get the provisional okay that pretty soon it's going to be approved and we can go ahead and catch our flight and go home back to Indiana. And then a mile from our house, we get the call that it's official and we can take him home. So 1 mile away.
Really?
Every time I drive by that spot, I can remember. Yeah. So I get to remember that we got the call that he could officially be with us and go to our house, which is pretty funny.
That's cool. Wow. Now, how old was your youngest biological child when you adopted Elijah? Because Elijah was 6 months, and then so how old was the other one?
So they are, 21 months. They're 15 months apart. So he was 21 months.
Wow.
And I sent you a couple of pictures because their connection was immediate. Of course, the older kids absolutely adored him. From the second he was here, he was a really, really happy baby and content baby. So they all adored him, but you could see that Elijah and Jonas already knew each other. I mean, just the way they looked at each other and the way they snuggled, and they were touching each other's face. I have probably 50 pictures of them drinking bottles and holding hands because they would just
cute.
snuggle.
That's so cute.
They would have their hands on their heads, and I think they were little twinners. It was pretty fun. They have a special connection, and all our kids have learned so much because of these experiences. I mean, they've learned to love adoption. They've gotten to go inside the temple and participate in his healing. They got to learn about, just some of the experiences of people that have a different color of skin than you do. They've just really learned about what it is to make a family, and that it's if anybody ever brings up that he's not biologically related to us, I just tell them that I'm not biologically related to their dad either, and we're still a family. And
I love that.
Good point.
They seem to understand that.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we're still a family.
Very true.
Yeah, but it's not, it's a normal part of a family to them, which is such a blessing. It's such a beautiful thing. It's good to know that one of our kids has best friend twins that are adopted. And I think that's just so important that we try to normalize it. It's definitely a normal part of our son's life. He talks about it. The kids kind of all came to terms with it as they grew up, and it's made it so normal for him. And his relationship with his birth mom is normal. They love to text emojis to each other. So that's kind of their love language is emojis. So they used to just be totally random, but now he has things that he sends with purpose. Like he sends her a specific picture and it has like a reason for it. So it's so sweet to see their relationship.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you have any questions about anything, or?
My cheeks hurt from smiling because it's just such a feel good story. You know what I mean? Like, and especially just how many different perspectives that you get from it. Like a lot of the times you don't get all of that. And so it's neat to see how Heavenly Father really is in all the details, right? Like how he was helping your cousin to be inspired, and he was helping, Elijah's birth mom and even grandmother and stuff like that to be inspired, and the connections that you guys have already had throughout life. And it's just, it makes me wonder, like, well, I mean, so you had that moment, when sacrament was being passed where you had asked Heavenly Father, like, just kind of let me know, whatever. Was your shift instantaneous? I mean, like, I know that you felt the spirit and stuff like that, but was it, or were there moments where you had to like keep reminding yourself, okay, no, hold on, I got guidance, so like I don't need to freak out over this, or I don't need to doubt, or I don't need to go back and ask again, or like how did that transition for you work out?
Yeah, well, the thing about adoption is when you feel a call to adopt, we didn't know if it was Elijah that we'd be adopting. We didn't know if it was baby Jay. So we felt like we were going to adopt. We felt that call to adopt, but that was not our stewardship. That was not on us to decide who his parents would be, because we weren't his parents. So that was on his birth mom. That was on his foster mom once they had legal guardianship. Once they, that was their stewardship. That wasn't ours. So deciding to pursue him and to love him like he was ours and be there for him and care about him, all those things we could do. But during the first year of his life, we had 2 other families that approached us about adopting, and we got very specific answers about them. So with Elijah, it was that we were to pursue adopting him. With another one, it was a definite no. I was told not to get involved, which fortunately that little girl is exactly where she needs to be. But at the time, I didn't know that. So it was so scary. And who wouldn't love a little girl?
Cool.
That was so scary to say no. That was awful to say no. But I just knew that we were to not get involved at all. And another one we felt, because it was a family member, we felt like initially we couldn't get involved, but that if that was really something someone wanted, that we would have specific criteria that we would need met. So it was a definite no for the other ones. So that definitely confirmed that we were to pursue him, but that could have been our only interaction with him. It could have pursuing him could have been the gift that we gave him during that stage of his life, because certainly those other families loved him too. The family that had lost a child, the family that was fostering him, the families that adopted other kids and felt connected with him, that it could have been that it wasn't him. So that was just kind of part of our journey. That was the scary part. So no, there was no hesitation that we were going to adopt. I mean, I knew, when the Spirit tells you things, sometimes them just like the sky is blue. It was, I knew it. I knew that we would be protected during this process. And but you still had to go through it. You still had to live it. Similar to being pregnant with Jonas. I still had to survive it. Yeah. So that was powerful.
That's cool.
It's interesting too. So Elijah does have a different ethnicity than the rest of our biological family, which has been a beautiful experience too. We're really thankful for that. We felt when I first got guardianship of him, all of our friends and family that have brown skin, that have darker skin, they all wanted him to be a part of their culture. All of our native New Zealander, all of our Maori friends said that he looks like he's from there. Our Tongan friends wanted to have him as part of their culture. Our Hawaiian friends said that he looks exactly like them. They all wanted him. Everyone wanted him. But we felt like he had African ancestry. We felt pretty certain that he did. And then I met the Sisters of Zion at an event, and they told me about Elijah Abel. And that was when I really, embarrassingly, I didn't even know his name. I didn't know Elijah Abel's name. So they told me how important Elijah's name is in the Latter-day Saints Black community.
Right.
So that was special. The Heavenly Father had named him a name that would be, something that would be so meaningful, obviously meaningful to him in his life. So that was neat. But we went about a year without being able to do his DNA testing, which I didn't know either. So babies, their saliva really is just water. So our jokes about it being water, we always used to say it was baby saliva was 98% water and only 2% gross. Because they would just be, babies just always have a wet face, right? From teething and everything. And
you just get used to wearing it on you. Like, you're like, what are you talking about? I have spit on me all over. Like, exactly. I don't know.
So it really is only water.
Wow. Too funny.
Yeah, so it is only water. There's not enough DNA to even test it. So for a year, we just went off of what we just said, well, we think that it's this, but we didn't know. So that was really neat to be able to see his ancestry, that he's Scottish and Northern European and West
Wow.
African, specifically Nigerian. Yeah, so
Oh,
he had
wow.
ancestors that were slaves. So he came through the Caribbean through the slave trade, some of his
Oh,
ancestors,
man.
and then he does have some native, so Central America, Native American. So a little bit of
Hmm.
Spanish, a little bit of that as well.
Wow.
So that was a beautiful
Interesting.
That's
experience.
that is so cool that
Yeah.
you guys like made an effort to do that, because I this is the first time that I think I've ever heard anyone that I know personally who's adopted and stuff like that that like has done that deep dive into the ancestry of their adopted children. That's really, really cool that you've done that so that you can help him to understand a part of like who he is and where he came from, Like I don't even
Yeah.
know my own ancestry.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with ancestry stuff. I know I'm partly related to my best friend. That's all I know.
Hey, that's good. That's good.
I know.
I am too, but they're
Well
my sisters.
done.
So
Yeah.
What can I say? Wow.
So I have a question for you, Goldie.
yeah. Mhm.
What advice would you have for people going through the adoption process or that want to adopt, and having gone through it?
Yeah. So I think it would be similar to other adoptive parents that you've had on. I think they gave really good advice. It's kind of researching as far as what the laws are and requirements are and options are in your community, in your state, really. Hooking up with local groups. There's all sorts of local um, Facebook groups and different things, because the laws are so different in each state. So you can't really give advice about the specific process unless you're in that
Right.
state. So because
Right.
everything is just so different. So I think that is really important. And they always welcome parents or prospective adoptive parents are always nervous to join adoptive groups and communities because they think that they feel like an outsider, but they are always welcomed
Mm-hmm.
in. They're always welcomed in. So
Right.
never be nervous about that. People will be happy. They've been through the trenches on this topic, so they are not going to push you away. They're not going to mistreat you. They'll be happy to talk to you and give you support. And no question, there really is not stupid questions when it comes to adoption. You can ask the most basic thing, and people will be straight with you because they remember that it's confusing. It's like a different language. Learning to
Yeah.
speak it and learn what the different options are. The biggest advice that I think I've given in adoption support groups has to do with their relationship with the birth mom.
Mhm.
It was a very tumultuous at first, just because she was struggling so much. It was so hard. It took everything that she had to do this
Mhm.
for him. And I know she did it because she loved him and she prioritized him and she understood what, during the time of addiction that she was really in, she was not able to give him what he needed. And she knew that. And so she made the best decision for him at a time when she wasn't making the best decisions for herself. So it was a huge sacrifice for her.
Yeah.
But the things that Heavenly Father told me specifically about her, and I had to be really humble. I mean, there was times when she was really upset with me, talking to me on the phone, and I'm standing in my grandma's little apartment attached to my parents' house, and I'm just praying, what do I say? What do I do? And Heavenly Father told me to set boundaries. So establish, he gave me more of like a visual of it, but it's basically setting boundaries. So say what you're going to do. So decide, what are you comfortable with? Because it's not going to look exactly the same. The relationships and the
Mhm.
interactions are not going to look exactly the same, especially at
Mm-hmm.
times when you have safety concerns and you don't know
Right.
their personality very well. So you got to figure
Mhm.
out, talk to your, if you have a co-parent or a spouse, talk to them and make decisions of exactly what you're going to do. And then you have to do what you said you would do. Absolutely. You cannot change and adapt it. You can't say, well, we can't do that anymore. You have to be very specific with what you say. So if you say you're coming on a Tuesday and you don't know if you can be there on Tuesday, you have to say, we will be there sometime in these parameters, and then you have to make it happen. You have to do it.
Right.
So that was absolutely necessary to establishing a healthy relationship with her, because she had not had reliable people. She had not had people hurt her and then make up for it. She'd not had those kind of experiences enough, not nearly enough, because she wasn't able to trust us, because she was the one that was completely vulnerable, right? She didn't have the guardianship. She didn't have, she had no more legal rights. She completely terminated her rights. So we had to show her that we would do what we said we would do. And we always did. And our relationship grew. And she just has absolutely blown my mind with how amazing she's been. It started to where it was very focused on what she needed, her being able to needing to see him, which I understand. I totally understand. It was where she was. But it came to the point where she just really cares about what's best for him. I mean, she thanks us. She'll messages me. She's like, I just love you guys. We had a sacred experience when abortion was in the news a lot. Of course, having had your child being born to someone else, it's extra sensitive topic for you, because it was never it wasn't in your control, And so just the idea that he would have ever been threatened, or knowing how many Black or African-American babies are not safe in their mother's womb, even here in our country, is really hard to know. It's really hard to know what the statistics are. So one day, just out of the blue, she reached out to me and she said, I just wanted you to know that his life was never in danger when he was growing in my stomach, that I would have never hurt him.
Wow.
And that was powerful. I loved that she was thinking about, I just thought that was so awesome that she would take the time to tell me that, because it had crossed my mind. I had been, I guess, worrying about something that didn't need to be worried about, like we were talking about. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Goldie, thank you so much for jumping on here today and sharing your incredible story of motherhood and adoption, and the way that Heavenly Father is just so there in everything. I'm envious. I'm going to be honest. I'm envious. I have been wanting to adopt for years and years and years, and it's just not something that my husband and I are on the same page about. And so when I see all these successful stories of people who are able to make that happen, and how many lives have changed because of it, it just inspires me, and it just makes me feel so warm inside, knowing that there are families like yours who can and will do it. I just think that's amazing. And especially like with everything you are already having to endure, and it is not easy taking care of babies and toddlers and boys and dogs. And so now you're like Wonder Woman. You should just wear a cape, I think, every day. Just walk around with a cape on. That would be awesome. But yeah, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to reach out to us and to share your story and to share this advice that you have, for other families and stuff like that who are looking to adopt. So I think that it was beautiful. It was just smile and feel good, and I loved it.
It's a great way to grow your family. There is definitely there's no difference in the connection that you have. One thing that was really awesome to us was reading from the adoption decree. I don't know if you've ever read that before. Would you guys like to hear a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure.
It says, because I think this is powerful for anyone, especially adoptees. Sometimes you can feel displaced. That can be a big struggle. But I would like any adoptees to read their adoption decree, because I think that is really beautiful. Okay, so it says, Jaron David Shiner should be named Elijah Jaron Wells, and that hereafter said child should be entitled to receive all rights and interests in the estate of such adopting parents by descent or otherwise, which said child would be adopted to if he had been the natural heir of such adopted parents. It is further ordered that Elijah Jaron Wells, for all intents and purposes, be considered the natural child of such adopting parents, and shall be entitled to the same rights and privileges which he would be entitled to if he had been the natural heir of such adopting parents.
Love that.
Wow. That's awesome. That is so beautiful. So beautiful, honestly. Wow. Well, Goldie, thank you again for joining us today. And thank you to all of our listeners for hopping on and for listening to this story. I'm just walking away with just all this happiness. I just have so much happiness right now. And so I really, really appreciate you. To our listeners, guys, we love hearing stories, and it doesn't have to be the exact same or anything similar, or it could be. We've had a couple other guests on, like Goldie, who have talked about their adoption processes, and everyone's is unique, and everyone's has a special message to share. And so don't hesitate. If you have a story that meant something to you, that helped you to build your testimony, or helped you to learn a message about the gospel, or about Heavenly Father's love, or any of those other wonderful truths that we have access to, be sure to reach out to us. Head over to latterdaylights.com. At the bottom of the page, you can fill out a form, and you too can request to be on the show. We would love to see if we could help you guys to spread that light. So be sure to do that, and share Goldie's story as well. If you can do what Scott's coined his 5-second missionary work, and just hit that share button, leave a little comment for Goldie and for her family. I think that would be amazing. And let us know. Like, I'm curious to know, have you guys had any special experiences with adoption, from any perspective of that? We would love to hear some of the comments on that. So, all right. Well, Definitely. Scott, is there anything else?
No, I don't think so. But other than thanking Goldie for being on the show.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
It lifts us too, motivates everybody in their parenting and loving children.
Yep.
Definitely. Yeah. So thanks again, Goldie. And thanks again, everyone, for being on with us here on the podcast. And we will see you next Sunday when we'll have another episode for you to watch. Till then, take care, and we'll see you then.
Bye, guys.